Hi everyone, I'm Stergios from University of Thessaly, UTH, and today we will explore together the key aspects of the DCBA component. DCBA stands for the Device Continuous Behavioral Authentication Mechanism, and this component provides continuous authentication based on the device behavior of the behavior of the user devices, ensuring protection without interrupting user experience. So first, we will start with a quick introduction in which we will analyze the scope and the goals of this component. Therefore, we will proceed with a technical outline in which we will discuss the system architecture and how can it be used by the users. And last, we will conclude by reviewing two short demonstration videos. So, as we just mentioned, we'll start with a quick introduction by going over a few problems in today's traditional authentication methods. And then we will discuss and provide some solutions that continuous authentication offers to each one of these problems. So the first and most important is that the current traditional authentication methods verify the users once only at the login, and they don't check if anything is suspicious after they are logged in and authenticated, while the continuous authentication keeps monitoring the entire device session continuously. So even in order to check post-login deviations that may occur in the device behavior. Also, as we all know, the current traditional authentication methods, they simply use and relying only on password and pins, which can be easily spoofed, stolen, or guessed by thieves. But on the other hand, the continuous authentication relies only on the behavioral patterns of the user devices, which is much harder to replicate. Also, since the traditional authentication methods nowadays rely on pins and passwords, are more, of course, vulnerable to attacks. And this happens because in order for the users to remember all these credentials, they need to choose simple passwords or pins. And we all know the more easier the password, the more easier is to compromise it. But on the other hand, the continuous authentication acts as an extra layer of security by continuously validating the user device behavior. So that means even if all these credentials, let's say, for example, passwords or pins can be compromised by others, the way they use the device will likely be different. So this deviation in the device behavior will be detected by the continuous authentication. And last but not least, current traditional authentication methods ask repeatedly the users to verify their identities, interrupting the user experience. While the continuous authentication runs in the background, keeps monitoring the entire device session without interrupting the user experience, and only asks for a verification, let's say, if an abnormality is detected in real time. So just to conclude with the introduction, the continuous authentication focuses on two main tasks. The first one is to monitor the device behavior to detect deviations from normal patterns, while the second is to monitor the device location by applying a localization mechanism based on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth low energy RSSI signals. In case someone doesn't know, RSSI signal stands for Received Signal Strength Indicator. And in simple terms, in order to understand, it just depicts how strong a signal is that we get, let's say, from an access point. So proceeding now with with technical outline the system architecture. An Android application is designed exclusively for smartwatches, and more specifically, it is tested and developed in the Samsung Galaxy Smartwatch Classic 6. So this is the main interface upon opening the application. And now, in order to authenticate the employees to log into our application, we use the QR code scanner philosophy. So now, in order to scan the QR code, the users need to install a production ready application which is called the TANGO SSI Wallet in their smartphones. and they just simply scan the QR code presented in their smartwatches. And then the TANGO SSI Wallet will navigate them in their smartwatch in another UI page, in which they need to select the correct credential in order to authenticate it. So the current implementation utilizes the passport credentials. So after the scan is complete, the users need to select in their smartphones the passport credential, and they need to click accept. And then what happens is that all these credentials are being sent to the verifier, which this verifier communicates directly with our DCBA backend in order to send us the information whether the authentication fails or succeeds. So if everything goes smoothly, after the authentication completes, and the users will see on their smartphones, on their smartwatches, this UI. So as we just saw, we can see the DID, which is a credential associated with the user, and stands for the decentralized identifier. We can also see the sub, which is a unique identifier in the identity system associated with this specific user. And last but not least, we can see the device ID associated with this user, and also alongside with a logout button. Now a real question is what happens if instead of using the passport credential, for example, an employee or a user by accident selects the employee credential or any other credential and click accept. In scenarios like this, a prompt is displayed in the watch during the authentication, informing the user that currently these credentials, of course, are not associated with our passport. So all the user need to do is just to click OK in order the new QR code is generated, and repeat the entire process, but this time they need to select the correct credential, which is the passport. And another, of course, real-time scenario that may happen is what happens if the device during the entire session, by all means when the users enter our application and authenticated, goes offline and loses network access. So in this scenario, a notification appears on the watch that informs the user that currently the device is out of network, and all the logs are being stored offline. And now in order to offline, by all means, are stored inside internally the device, prompt for a future transmission. And all the users need to do at this step is just to re-enable the Wi-Fi and connect to a network in order to function properly. So the main notification that ensures that our application functions properly as it is designed to is this, and it is tied to a foreground service which runs in the background, again, without interrupting the user experience. And now this foreground service is responsible to filter all these logs based on our areas of our interest. For example, currently we're examining the interface of the network, of the Bluetooth and the battery. And then after this filtering is done by our application, all these logs are transmitted to the server for the further analysis. Now, at this step, it is also critical to mention that since the Android operating system /OS is not providing any information or any log data related to the location, also this foreground service scans for the nearby Wi-Fi and Bluetooth low energy RSSI signals, which then transmits them to the server in order to apply the localization mechanism and finally estimate the device location. But a valid question is, what are these Android system logs that we are currently examining? A very, very quick introduction. These logs are just records that indicating how the device behaves. For example, they can provide information about, let's say, network activity, Bluetooth connections, or battery usage. And of course, they are divided into several fields. For example, as we can see, this log indicates that currently our device is connected to a network with SSID NICLO. So now in this table, we can see all these logs that we are currently examining. In the first column, we see the tag, which is this tag is helpful in order to filter the logs of our interest from the enormous amount of the entire logs that are generated by the Android operating system. And in the second column, we got the interface. the interface informs us about, in simple terms, it says what information this log provides about. For example, it provides information about the network, about the Bluetooth, or about the battery. The third column depicts, shows the component that generates all these logs. For example, we've got the Android OS and Authenticator, which is our application running in the smartwatches. And last but not, but most important is the use case of these logs. For example, we've got some of these logs are prompt are transmitted to the server and used in order to detect deviations in the device behavior, while other of these logs are transmitted to the server for the localization purposes. So speaking of which, for example, we've got these two logs, which is the Wi-Fi network selector and the Bliss scanner. The first one is responsible to, let's say, to scan for the nearby Wi-Fi RSSI signals, while the second one is responsible to scan for the Bluetooth low energy RSSI signals that we get from the Bluetooth low energy devices respectively. And these two logs are transmitted to the server, as we just said, for the localization purposes, while the rest of the logs that we see in this table are supported device behavior monitoring to detect the unusual patterns. So this is how we use our application, and just to conclude, it filters the logs and just transmits them to the second component of our system architecture, which is a server, and its core functionalities includes user registration upon their first login. It handles also the login/authentication and the logout, and the most important, it manages the storage and the processing of the upcoming system logs. And now, based on the received logs, it will either apply a localization mechanism or it will utilize a machine learning model by utilizing then the machine learning technology in order to detect abnormalities in the log sequences. So we'll start with the localization first in order to understand it completely. And we will start with a very short and simple scenario. We can consider, let's say, a facility, a factory, a company, whatever you want. With many employees and of course with various roles. For example, we got let's say the simple employee, we got managers and supervisors. And also, as we can see at each corner of the factory, of the facility, we got an access point. So also this facility is divided into several fields. For example, into several areas, For example, we've got the areas 1 and 2, which access is allowed, is permitted to everyone, while the access in the area 3 is restricted. And so when an employee, let's say, enters the facility and is authenticated by our application, and the entire session just started, now our application collects all these RSSI signals from all these access points respectively and transmits them to the server. The server now, based on the received RSSI signals, performs the localization mechanism and estimates the location that currently this employee is placed to. So let's say that currently the mechanism estimates that the current location of the device is the area 2, and then finally makes a decision. Is the area 2 permitted for this specific employee? Of course it's yes. So no alert is generated at this step. And the same scenario happens when the employee enters the area 1, since the same happens there, the access is allowed. But when the employee enters the area 3, which access is restricted, now the updated RSSI signals that are collected by our application and transmitted to the server are being used in order to apply the localization mechanism. And now the server estimates that the current location of the device is the area 3. And then finally makes a decision, because since the access to the area 3 is restricted, it finally generates an alert, which then, in order to inform the supervisor or the manager for this unacceptable behavior. And now we'll proceed with the second continuous authentication mechanism, the device behavior. And more specifically, we utilize the machine learning technology there. We train a machine learning model based on the device normal behavior, and more specifically how the user independently interacts with the device under typical usage conditions. So we expect that after the training, the model should understand the typical device behavior during user interactions, and it will be able to detect deviations and abnormalities that differ from this established behavior. So finally, in the evaluation phase, in the real time, if the model detects an abnormality, it will notify the application, which then alerts the device directly. Let's consider at this step, for example, if we got rooted devices. A root device is the same device as it is stock, but we removed its firmware and we just flash it back with our custom options and modifications in order to access everything in our device. So let's say in this scenario that if we have rooted devices, if an abnormality is detected in real time by our machine learning model, we can, let's say, for example, ask for the device pin, or we can lock the device completely. So these two were the continuous, were the subcomponents of the main larger DCBA component. The first localization mechanism estimates the location of the devices based on the received RSSI signals from nearby access points, and finally generates an alert or not based if this employee is permitted to access the specific area or not. While the second one, the machine learning model, detects deviation in real time based on the device behavior. And now we'll proceed with two short demos. And now in the first one demo, we'll see how the users can use our application and interact with the entire application. And now, just to proceed, first of all, we just made the front end designed specifically for the managers and the supervisors. Of course, it is blurred due to legal purposes. So by entering this front end, as we can see, the page shows a field in which we can enter the passport ID, and also we have some of the areas that present in the facility. So now all the supervisor or the manager needs to do is to enter an employee passport ID. Of course, this passport ID is a mock, just for the demo. And then the supervisor also selects the permitted areas, for instance, the areas that this employee associated with this specific passport ID is authorized to enter. For example, now, if we hit the apply changes there, that means that the employee associated with this specific passport ID is allowed to access only the permitted area. So if the localization algorithm / mechanism will detect at any random time that this employee, for example, is presented in the sorting lines 6 to 8, it will generate an alert informing the manager that for this behavior. And now we'll proceed for launching the application for the first time. So since our application scans for all these Wi-Fi and Bluetooth RSSI signals, we need to grant access also to the foreground location, and now for the background location. This is a restriction to Android. You can't grant the background location if you didn't grant the foreground location. And last but not least, we need to allow the notifications, since we need the watch to inform about we need the smartwatch to inform the users whether the application functions proper or not. And after this process, of course, completes, once these permissions have been granted by the users, then of course it will not be asked again. So now we'll proceed directly with the employee login. Of course. So upon opening the application, as we just saw and as we just discussed in the technical outline, a QR code is generated and displayed in the smartwatch. And in order to scan it, so all the users need to do is to open a production-ready application called the TANGO SSI Wallet, and then they choose to scan for a credential, and then they just simply scan the QR presented in their smartwatches. And now they need again to select the passport credential. And by clicking accept, the verifier will communicate directly to our backend. And then the backend, in order to inform about if the authentication is success or fail, and then our backend will notify this watch using the WebSocket technology whether the authentication fails or succeeds. So now we are currently logged into the application, and the entire session just began. So now the employee just he enters the facility, he's performing his shift, and then when all the shifts are done, they just simply log out, and all this process terminates, and the application terminates too. Now we'll see the scenario when someone trying to log in with invalid verified credential. So again, we scan the QR code using the TANGO SSI Wallet application, of course. And then there is a scenario because let's say by accident someone will not enter the passport, will enter, for example, the custom credential. So as we can see, a prompt will be displayed both on the smartwatch, informing the user that currently these credentials are not associated with our passport. So all the users need to do at this step is just to click the OK button. So a new QR code will be generated right about now. Yes. And then again, using the TANGO SSI Wallet to repeat the process, scan, but this time they need to choose the correct credential, which is the passport. And they are logged into the application. At last, but more critical, we will examine the scenario of the network disconnection. For example, and right now we will try to open the application while the device is out of network. So as we can see, the application is not letting us proceed. It is informing us, this prompt is informing us to re-enable the Wi-Fi or to reconnect to a network. So we navigate to the settings, and then we just re-enable the Wi-Fi and we connect to a network in order to gain network access. And since this the connection is established, we just simply reopen the application, we click OK, and everything will go smoothly. And now we will again log in very, very quickly using again the TANGO SSI Wallet. In order to examine the second scenario, which says what happens when the device gets out of network during the session is ongoing, for example. Now, as we can see, this notification informs us about that currently all these logs are being transmitted, are being collected by our watch, by our application, and transmitted to the server for analysis. And so we just, during this process, we just disconnect from the Wi-Fi. And as we just saw in the technical outline earlier, the network disconnected notification appears, inform the user that currently all these are being stored offline internally in the device, and informing us to reconnect back to the internet. So once the connection is re-established, as we can see, the main notification appears, which ensures that our application functions properly. And now we will proceed with the real-time demo. So in this last demo, which is shorter, of course, we will see in real time the localization mechanism. This scenario was placed in our premises in our laboratory in Volos, in University of Thessaly, and we were currently monitoring 3 different offices, let's say. Is the office 2.04, and last is the kitchen. So also, we modified the application just to start the entire process. There is no login required, no employee login required. So by clicking the start process, now our application starts to collect and scan for nearby RSSI signals, both from Wi-Fi access points and both from Bluetooth low energy devices, respectively. So we are heading to the 2.04 office, and we'll wait until, of course, these two scans complete. So as we can see currently, the estimated locations are unknown because all these scans are not complete yet. But as soon as the scans are completed, now based on the Bluetooth, we get the same localization mechanism, which is the Euclidean distance, of course, runs and correctly points out that our device is presented currently of the cutoff is 2.04, and also the same happens for the Wi-Fi also. Now the next scan starts, and we're heading to the office 2.01, and we wait a little bit. So now, as we can see, yes, based on the Bluetooth Low Energy RSSI signals, it correctly point out that currently our estimated location is the Ekita office 2.01, and the same happens when the Wi-Fi completes, the Wi-Fi scan completes right there. And last, now we are heading to the kitchen. But just to be mentioned, we will talk about it in a few seconds. We're just passing directly outside the Ekita office 2.04. So this is the kitchen. We just entered the kitchen, and now, as we can see, based on the Bluetooth Low Energy RSSI signals, the algorithm incorrectly estimated that our currently location is the Ekita office 2.04 while we are present in the kitchen. And this happened because during the Bluetooth Low Energy scanning, we were passing directly outside the Ekita office 2.04. So if we wait a little bit in order all these signals get stabilized perfectly. Now the Wi-Fi informs us that currently we are resident in the kitchen /VC/server room, which is the same area. And if we wait accordingly also for the Bluetooth to complete and the RSSI signals to get stabilized, there it is. We get that the estimated location both for the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth Low Energy is the kitchen. So this was a live demonstration since the Reaston pilot is currently ongoing in order to run in a few days. And thank you very much. This was the presentation of the DCBA component. You can follow us on all the platforms in order to be updated for the latest.